Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Malia Hampton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant Kieran Higbed. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the name of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Tonight, we remember and pay tribute to Gunner Walter Gardner Crease. Walter Gardner was born on the 17th of September 1919 in Cairns, Queensland, to Cyril and Winifred Gardner. His father was a cane farmer, and he had three brothers, Alan, Leslie, and Charles. Known as Wally Gardner, he was working as a labourer when he enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 20th of January 1941. Several months later, he was discharged as medically unfit with lumbar pain, at which point he travelled to Sydney, where he enlisted again, this time under the name Wally Crease, on the 12th of July. He gave the birthplace Victoria. At this point, he declined to give the names of family or friends to act as his next of kin. From here, he was posted to the 1st Field Training Regiment and spent some months training in Canberra. Crease embarked from Sydney on the 10th of January 1942, arriving in Singapore 2 weeks later. Following Japan's entry into the war, the units of the 8th Division were involved in fierce fighting on the Malayan Peninsula. The 2nd 15th Field Regiment, to which Crease was transferred, was in almost constant action, providing artillery support as the infantry withdrew towards Singapore. On the 14th of February 1942, Commonwealth forces in Malaya were forced to surrender, and Gunner Crease was among the 45,000 British and Australian troops who became prisoners of war. He was initially held at the Changi prisoner of war camp, but the Japanese soon called for working parties to build and expand new infrastructure across their empire. In July, Crease volunteered with Bravo Force, which left for Borneo in 1942. Assured of better food and conditions, the almost 1,500 members of Bravo Force found themselves instead on a hellish sea journey, crammed into the cargo holds of the ship Ubi Maru for 11 days before arriving at Sandakan. Conditions at Sandakan soon developed into some of the worst experienced by prisoners of the Japanese throughout the war. Prisoners, including the sick, were forced at gunpoint to work on the construction of a military airstrip and were often beaten by their captors. Illness and death ravaged the camp, and food was, of course, scarce. The completed airfield was soon bombed by Allied aircraft, and between January and March 1945, those prisoners who could be made to walk were forced into a series of marches west to Ranau, a distance of about 260 kilometres. Crease was among the 455 fittest prisoners and thus was forced into undertaking the very first of these marches. The journey was horrendous. Japanese guards refused to let the prisoners rest, and those too sick or too weak to continue were left behind to die or were summarily executed by the guards. Crease placed himself at the rear to help those who fell behind and support those who were struggling. Just 309 men made it to Ranau, including Gunner Wally Crease. The Ranau camp provided no shelter, and with little to no food, the rate of deaths among the prisoners rose daily. Crease secretly questioned a local who told him of a possible escape route. On the 1st of March, he and his friend, Gunner Albert Cleary, managed to escape. They remained free for almost 2 weeks before Cleary and then Crease were recaptured. They were brutally beaten by the guards for more than 12 hours, but the following day, the 14th of March, Crease made a mad dash for the jungle. He managed to disappear for a while, but was soon once again recaptured. At this point, he was executed by the guards. The Japanese listed his cause of death as malaria. He was just 24 years old. After the war, a recovery team was able to identify Crease's remains, and he was buried at the Labuan War Cemetery in Malaysia under the inscription, "A son, brother, and uncle, sacrificed for peace, lives on in our hearts." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, amongst the 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Gunner Wally Gardner Crease, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.